Hey, everybody. This is the Big Roofs Podcast. I'm John Delaurier, one of the co-founders of ProLine, and I have today Tim Brown. He's the founder of Hook Agency in Minnesota. Everybody in the roofing space pretty much knows who Hook is and probably who Tim is. Super excited today to talk about something that I'm also very passionate about is we're going to call this podcast Building a Business People Feel. Oxytocin over ad spend. Tim, what's going on?
Not much, man. I've just been diving into this idea that we can create chemicals in people's brains just with little things in our marketing, and that those chemicals will help us make people want to be customers of our company, which I really believe. I've seen it firsthand in our company, and I've seen how roofers can do it too. And it's fun. It's fun once you feel the ability to do that. And a lot of you already know because you do a lot of this stuff in sales, and it's just figuring out how to turn that out into your marketing.
Yep, absolutely. I towards the end of my roofing business, for about 2 years I worked with a small marketing company that's local to Savannah, and we would do things like dad jokes on the beach. We would do like very candid, but things that we were actually passionate about as a team. And we wanted people to have emotion, to feel who the people were who were going to come to their house. Had nothing to do with roofing, but we wanted people to have, I mean, people did, especially on TikTok. We had local people that were following us on TikTok that went multi-generational, and they loved our dad jokes. Like, we just kept doing, we would just go every single week, record 20 videos. We would literally use ChatGPT just to come up with dad jokes, do the dad jokes, bam, 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 bam. And we had a lot of success with that. It was, I just think all roofing contractors and all contractors of any shape and size need to really get outside of their comfort zone and do something different. It was not like super looking forward to this. It was, we know we want people to see us and we want to be a service to our community. So I expand on that, Tim. Like, you're talking to your client base, like, what are you trying to get them to do to get to this oxytocin over just soulless ad spend?
Oh yeah. And I think to start on what you're talking about with the jokes, working on this book right now, How to Become a Hometown Hero. And I have a whole chapter about humor, memes, jokes. Got Mike Goldenstein guesting on the audiobook version and his insights in the physical version. And, like, people probably don't remember this. It's been years. But the people called me the roofing meme king back in the day. And I watched a lot of stand-up comedy. I like curating memes on my Instagram. I like making memes. I believe in dad jokes deeply. We don't stone our fathers for telling dad jokes, even if there's a groan, because it means that they're we know that anytime somebody is funny, they're trying to create warmth, connection, and goodwill. And every attempt at a joke is actually a social risk. So generally people just respond very well to even attempts at jokes in a positive way. And humor is a great example to start with for this topic of how to create chemicals in people's brains. Because if you really do get somebody to laugh, it activates chemicals in our brain. What is a laugh? It's a contraction of the diaphragm. It's an expression of amusement, and it releases dopamine in the brain. Can you imagine if you could just, across town, you're like making a little video on your phone, you post it in 30 minutes, not 2 hours like a psycho. Stop spending so much time on these things, but you post it and then somebody across town gets a release of dopamine in their brain.
It's
Can
wild.
you You imagine how powerful that is to be able to just give people dopamine? Like, that's crazy. And it creates loyalty because we get these feel good chemicals. It reinforces like a group cohesion. It's like it's a primal urge to experience that group cohesion and that laugh in our, our diaphragm or whatever. It's a wild amount of opportunity. And that's just one chemical, dopamine through humor. And you can do it now. You could go post something on your Facebook or whatever, your Instagram, TikTok, and get somebody to laugh. Now, it takes a little while to learn that, right? But what I'm telling people to do is like, try, watch the comedians you love. I love Theo Vaughn. I watch him regularly. And I actually, like, when I laugh, I'm wondering, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, why did I just laugh? And that's okay to do. It's okay. These comedians study comedy. They actually break down their jokes and they talk about them together and they act like it, I don't know. You guys probably, some of you watch Joe Rogan and like on episodes, they'll talk about why a bit is funny, they'll dissect it. And it pulls a little bit of the fun. Anytime you talk about humor, it's hard to like do it at the same time you're talking about it. Cause part of it is it's misdirection and you don't expect it to be funny. And then it's funny. And that's part of why it works. But it's okay to try. And it's okay to look at jokes and be like, why was that funny? It's whether it's like being absurd, cranking it up to 100, doing something the opposite of what you expect. Because you notice comedians, some of the funniest bits I do will be like, by the way, I got to tell you, this isn't a joke. I just want to tell you something serious right now. And then they go and they hit the joke, right? So you don't expect it. And then there's like the rule of 3, which is a setup and then another setup and then surprise. So there's a lot of like little frameworks that you can use and it's okay. What I'm telling people is it's okay to get more humorous. And I think that's one of the easier ones to start. That and putting more cute animals and babies on your content. Straight up oxytocin. And the weird part is I've been doing research as part of this book to like figure out why these things release chemicals in our brains. And I'll tell you why. For babies and cute animals, for babies in particular, our ancestors that had that oxytocin and that love and that I want to protect this thing for the baby, more of those people's genes survived.
Yep.
So it just kept on going. So it's like been built into us because of selective survival. Like those kids survived more likely. You know what I mean? Like, cause they were taken care of. And so the big cheeks, all that stuff, that's oxytocin. So we got dopamine, we got oxytocin. Now you're starting to create this chemical cocktail that's nearby love. And you can create that in your audience across town, it's wild, actually. Those are just a couple examples, but I'm really like diving into that and learning more. Like I'm researching this while I'm writing this book and like, wow, it's kind of a powerful thing to be able to wield those things in your marketing so that it's more effective. And when we go cold and when we go, I just want to pay to go away to our marketers, or we act like we don't need to involve ourselves and our humanity and we want to just pay for a lead, we get a much lower return because humans connect with humans. People want to do business with people they like, know, and trust. And there's a lot of opportunity in that.
Yep.
David Ogilvy says, if you can make people smile, you can make them buy. And so all of this kind of relates to that. Like we can, and people know, like I said, people know because they're selling usually. Like you guys are pretty good at selling normally. Even if you're at $500K a year and you're a contractor or roofer, you're probably pretty good at sales. Like that's not nothing. That's a lot of work. And you're usually pretty good at connecting with people. Selling one thing you have to be pretty good at connecting with people, right? But it's trying to figure out how to take that charm type and flip it out onto the internet. We're trying to take a little bit more of your charm and show it to the world. I think people are scared to do it.
Yep. I totally agree. One thing that one of my guys said as we were doing all these dad jokes and other things, we were doing all kinds of, we're doing skits.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
they said, I didn't know I was going to be doing stuff for TikTok. I'm like, I thought I was just supposed to be selling roofs. Like, I think anyone watching or listening needs to understand you just can't accept that anymore. You have to, everything that you're saying about dopamine and oxytocin, like it's true. You do need to make sure that your goal are those two things so that you're helping people connect with your brand. And your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not your name. Your brand is the things that make people feel a certain way. And it could be trust. It could be, this is a funny company that does X, but you've got to consistently improve communication. That's the biggest thing that I'm not good speaking on stage. I'm in the category of it's my number one fear. I'd rather die. But I am working on it and I am putting myself physically on stages to practice that so that I can be better with my facial expressions, my body language. What do I do with my hands? How, like my tonality, those things are important. We all, as humans, if you want to be successful in any avenue, but contractors specifically, it's like shooting fish in a barrel now because no one's trying these things. They're not trying to, like, when we're talking about oxytocin and dopamine, like, oh, of course I want that. Well, what does it take? It does take some consistent hard work of improving this communication skill set that you have and also believing in it enough to help your team do the same thing, like to help your team also build their personal brand so that they can be successful in whatever role they're in.
Yep, and you're creating that community internally too. I think that's one of the underrated benefits of like trying to do more content. I mean, fundamental component of marketing, content. That's the building block. That's what it is. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Video content.
Now, advertising, you can go put up an ad and you don't have to do a bunch of content, but your advertising is going to be better if you know how to do content. So it's basically like everything kind of comes back to content. Also, it's good for culture, to create content together, to do something fun that's not, because fun wins on the internet right now. Like, what are you logging onto Facebook trying to see? You imagine I'm sitting on my couch. My wife is putting down the kid because I'm an asshole. I'm putting my feet up. I log into Facebook and I think, you know what I'd really like right now? I'd love some educational content on roof eaves. Or am I thinking, in my head, God, I just want some dopamine. I just want to laugh for 1 second, or whatever I want to see on the internet. What do you want to see on the internet? Besides that, John, what else do you want to see? No, there's so many things, but the point is we go in there for leisure and enjoyment, not for business all the time. So it's hacking that by being part of the entertainment. And that is what most people don't do because they're still trying to figure out how to flip the phone around and do any videos at all. But you have to go through that phase that's just really basic before you get to the next phase, which is we're going to be part of the entertainment. Because I realized when I'm part of the entertainment, I get 2,000 views. And when I try to preach about roof quality, I get 200 views.
Every single time. I mean, is wild. Of course, we would do the educational content, but
mix it in.
But it was 10%, maybe. Like we're on the roof. We're showing you underlayments. We're doing that stuff, but we're making sure that that's not the whole story. We're really trying to tell a story that doesn't, make people, scroll next. We want them to stay there. Why is this person like on the roof? What are they doing? Are they hanging off? Is there funny music? Is there something that is more than just educational, like you said. Like you have to think outside the box. And like one thing that we did, here's one thing that we did.
Yeah.
We made this skit where now I'm gonna forget the names. Jenny, our friend Emily, is a really good, she's very into the arts and she's a good actor, and I'm not a good actor. But we created the characters Jenny and Mike. Is my name Mike? I think my name is Mike. Long story short, we told a story in a really funny way of what the homeowners are seeing. And guess what? Our target audience are homeowners. What the homeowners have to experience when a roofing contractor schedules an appointment, does an inspection, comes up to the house unannounced. The people inside, we talked about the Google Calendar, and like, you're not checking the Google Calendar. Like, we're like, this is what people do. These are arguments that my wife and I have. They're like, oh, we didn't check the Google Calendar. I didn't know. Like right now, like there's some thing that my daughter's going to go to right now, and if I didn't check the Google Calendar, I wouldn't know. So we told this story that's actually helping people understand that we care about their time, but also funny because it's relatable. It's the biggest part of that story was super relatable because we took real life things that we had seen, and I had seen over 10, 15 years of being in roofing, walking up to the door, and one of the spouses has no idea who I am. The other spouse has had multiple conversations with me, and now they're mad, and you got to figure this out. And so you've got to come up with, I just worked with really good people who understood telling a story in a unique way. And it was fun. We laughed so much making it. It was super nerve-wracking for me, but we just did these clips. And for the dad jokes and for those like Mike and Jenny kind of skits, people were in our comments wanting to know the next part of the story or the next dad joke. Like, we knew we were onto something. We knew we were doing something that would help. Like, these are real homeowners that don't need a roof right now, but they remember our content because it was, like you said, they just want to be leisurely watching, scrolling, whatever social media platform. They don't want to necessarily learn, but they want to see what's this content's all about.
Yeah, I think this idea about relatability, it's an additional, you can layer that on humor. You can do that in your Facebook posts where it's like I believe people should be using their personal Facebooks to connect with more homeowners in their area or more customers, and being relatable is a really great way. It's just sharing real shit, basically.
Yeah, you need to, like, it is wild to me. That point is a huge point. I go to these, so ProLine, I help with like customer retention and then just building relationships with ProLine contractors. I go to their Facebook. I have no idea what they do professionally, and there's nothing personal on their Facebook. I'm like, guys, this is a really tough place to be in. Like, you have got to commit. This is the world that we're in. And these are not small companies. Like, I'm like, you need this. Like, this would help your business so much more if you would actually post things about your life. And it's almost to the point where, like, oh, it's just not my thing. Like, I don't give it. I'm not accepting that anymore. I used to be like really nice about it, but I'm like, you can't afford. You don't get the privilege as an owner to just fade into the ether, into like the Homer Simpson, fade into the shrubs. You can't do that. You can't. You've got to be relatable. You got to post personally on. That's a rant for me. Sorry, Tim. That was just.
No, I agree. I want to like go into talk about oxytocin, because I think this is part of oxytocin. Belonging, like relatability is related to belonging and identity. Like if you talk about things that are difficult about being a parent, and your ideal customers are parents, then those customers you create a deeper bond with them, and it's positive for life, not just for business, right? It's like good to connect with people and to relate. And I think the identity thing is something that I've been thinking about a lot too. It's like the tagline, like, choosy mothers choose Jif. for instance, what are they doing with that tagline? They're giving a very specific mothers. You're going to tell me you're going to cut off all the other customers except for mothers? And then you're also saying they're choosy, which could be good or bad. And then you're saying they like your company. What about everybody else? And that's what most roofers do, and why they don't, and contractors in general don't like specify. But I would guess that if you went for mothers, it doesn't scare anybody off. I love Jif and all their products. I'm a big Jif fan. I would eat Jif anything really if you put it in front of me. And I'm not a mother, but I think that principle though is good for people to understand. Like that's you're giving a very specific group. It's going to make them feel seen. You're infusing them with like pride, and you're creating this identity focused brand. Who is it for? I always say is the most important question in marketing. And another smart way, I went through Seth Godin's Alt MBA, and it was a really great experience. But one of the things that he talks a lot about, and he kept on hammering into our heads through the curriculum, was that people like us do things like this. And that thrust, that kind of is the undercurrent of great marketing. People like us do things like this. You'll see it everywhere if you really like understand what I'm saying when you're watching commercials, because they try to like set up an identity. It's like the young professional loves his Subaru or whatever it is, right? Like there's like they give you a persona, and they try to like make you want to identify with that persona, and they create this herd mentality. We're creating a identity that people belong to, whether it's mothers or whether it's, smart homeowners, or whatever you do, it's okay to cut some people out. You want to cut people out and give a really the stickier and tighter, the better. And I think mothers is a great one. I think a lot of those, it's like 70 or 80% or something of the first contact to most contractors is the female. I think it's like 60% of the final decision, but it's a crazy high amount of percentage of people that are women, and a lot of them are mothers. So I think that's a good one to think about. But I think the identity thing and the belonging is really good. And I think that this is when we were talking about creating a movement before the podcast. Like when we're trying to create a movement, I think tapping into this idea of belonging and identity and being like a symbol of that aspirational identity is like where I think we're tapping into our primal need for being part of a group. We all want to be part of a group. I want to be part of a group. That's why when we've niched into roofing, and we've had this like very tight, we say roofing on everything. We talk about roofing. We go out on roofs. We do roofs. Been up in a bunch of attics. Like shadowed a ton of great people. Done a ton of content totally tightly around roofing, where there's not that many people doing that. That those people feel seen and taken care of and want to be part of the group. Not only that, we've created essentially like growth mode roofers is kind of the tightest possible way to say what we're trying to do. And that identity might cut some people out. The $500,000 guy is not going to jive with my setup of a growth mode roofer. And the $20 million guy might look down on that a little bit. He might be like, I'm already mature, like over here. But that's okay. Is knowing who your ideal customer is and making really good marketing for those people, and being okay with cutting out some people. Like, we know it's not people that are renters. We know, for you, we know it's not, when you think about roofing, it's like, we know certain people, maybe it doesn't make sense. It may be parents age people that are the most likely, like I think about parents is a really good one. And really making your content for them. And so there's a lot of opportunity in that that's completely untapped, as you're talking about. A lot of people are not using these things. And I think it's hard to know unless you start to see the pattern. So if I'm telling you about some of these things with identity and belonging, and then you start to see it show up on the biggest brands in the world's commercials and all their marketing, then that might be a confirmation that some of what I'm saying is probably accurate. And I think that's until you start looking for it, you may not see it yet, but you will start to see it everywhere.
I love that. There's two things that I think of as you're talking about this is, I know kind of beat a dead horse with this is your ideal customer. Who's your ideal customer avatar? We've talked about this before many times, but you need to get to the point as an organization, as a leader, to really get into everything you said about mothers is amazing. Like, you need to think about who your sales reps are seeing at the door. Who's the first person calling? You need to really analyze those types of things so that you can always work, or as much as possible, work with the ideal customer. I got really good. The second part of that, I got really good. Even when I was super broke, I got really, really good at saying no, because every time I said no, I had you have the gut feeling. You're like, this is not going to be a good fit. This is some, whatever it is. When I said no, it was painful because I turned down millions of dollars over the 10 years. But the positive thing from that is that it freed up my time to work with people who were a good fit, who really appreciated our business, who weren't trying to, get the cheapest price or just whittle us down the lowest price possible and for every single thing, get extra things while you're up on the roof. You need to understand your ideal customer, and you need to be able to have the confidence to tell someone in a very respectful way you're not a good fit. And you've got to get to that point. You will be happier. Your team will be happier. They will also be more confident because you're supporting them working with great people. You want every member of your team to have a great day and a great week and a great month. So one way you do that is understand your ideal customer and then say no to the people who are not. It's really, really helpful and important. And my team really appreciated it. They felt very supportive because I had their back. I didn't say, let's just sell, sell, sell. I said, let's sell to the right people.
Yeah. Can I read a little bit from my book? Because it's basically about the backstory, because people always ask, why did you niche into roofing? And this is probably the closest to the actual moment that created this, it's a little story.
All right, what's the book called? Tell them again, because
the book is called How to Become a Hometown Hero, a Powerful Guide to Home Services Marketing, and it has people like Martin Pettigrew sharing insights in it. Marcus Sheridan is writing the foreword, by the way.
That's awesome.
And Tommy Mello in it, and John Cenac, and a bunch of other like really successful contractors. And so talking about how to get endless referrals and talking about how to build relationships in the community to have a super sticky brand. So that's what it's totally about. It's going to be really freaking good. But I'm just going to tell you one little story that's in it that relates to us niching, because this is when we started to say no, or this is what led to us saying no, I should say. So years prior to starting his own company, the marketer worked for every type of client, from stuffy corporate types and the insufferably hip to folks who would demand a sparkling, spinning website feature just to see if you could do it. A suburb office, Funko figurines and Star Wars memorabilia. The record company client sits back, a little emperor in his leather chair. His tone is casual, cold, pompous. I didn't really know this was going to be a website design presentation. I thought there would be more strategy. Boom. No fire, no screaming, just a sentence that slices through air and cuts him in half. The night before, the marketer had been on Instagram, posting a picture of himself in his first agency's conference room, Speaking with conviction, practicing for the big day. #marketing, #agency life, #strategy. Playing the part. Channeling his inner Don Draper after years of watching Mad Men like it was gospel. Deep down, a sneaking suspicion he was a fraud. But he felt like he could fake it till he made it. Now he stands frozen, sweat tracking down his spine as reality crashes through the performance. The design is absolutely getting ripped to shreds. People that have never touched a website before, all designing by committee. 10 rounds of revisions await. He's lost all creative authority, trapped in beta mode, constantly trying to prove something with no leverage. Later that night, walking through Uptown with his wife, spring is trying to emerge. Tiny baby watermelons growing in community gardens, the air warming, city awakening from winter. But to him, it doesn't feel like spring. It feels like a dying fall, and he wants it all to end. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, he says to his wife, with her own stressful, fledgling career. She tries to care, but she can't figure out why it's a big deal. I don't want to live getting ridiculed and torn apart by clients who don't respect me and a team that isn't ready for this, he tells her, voice wavering a little. He's given them his best, and it isn't enough. For a moment, he truly believes maybe I'll never make it. Maybe I should quit marketing forever. I'll read one more page. That was me. This wasn't an isolated moment. It was a pattern playing out at my last agency before Hook existed. We'd sell to some totally new industry. We had no specialty. We would do any marketing that they wanted. We were always constantly making up the playbook. I'd get humbled, and my entire strategy and approach was constantly called into question, and I had no recourse, really, because they were right. Something has to change. That client meeting planted a seed that would take years to fully bloom. I don't want to be liked. I want to be trusted. Slowly, that seed grew into clarity, but it took a long time. And then, it talks about like becoming an expert in one area, focusing on lead gen, not pretty for pretty's sake, doing search marketing, not all the things, serving one industry, home service contractors. Years later, another walk, this time on a freak warm winter day, snow melting around the Mississippi River. I'd been running Hook for 5 years, so this took a while to grow, right? My wife, frustrated from not doing our best work for a medical insurance auto adjudication company. That means using AI to turn down people's insurance claims, by the way, hit me with the sentence that rewired everything. We have to stop doing work for everyone and do our best work. That's when we circled July 1, 2021 on the calendar, the day that we would start turning down non-home service contractors. And that's when the exponential growth started. So anyways, that's kind of like the quick story of the niching thing. It took a long time for it to take root, but it's a question people give us a lot. And I think that moment where I just got the shit kicked out of me by it was a record company. They printed records. Just changed my brain. I hated being in a spot where they didn't take my expertise, and I also was a young marketer. So how much expertise did I really have at that time? Who knows? But it was like, I wanted to be in a spot where I actually was an expert at something. And I think that kind of created the emotional architecture that ended up like, all right, let's serve contractors and make it really fucking good.
It's awesome. I have a lot of stories like that. I won't go through them that made me go. Now we're going to say no to people. Just terrible situations that people know. People know the bad customers, and we knew from the beginning we shouldn't be working for them. Like all the gut feeling, just as humans, you don't have to have any experience to understand that this person's not a good client. And it did take me a while. It took me not quite 5 years, but almost 4 years. And we were doing everything. We were doing all the roofing and renovation. We were doing it all, and we finally niched down to just roofing and gutters, and it was the best decision ever. It was scary, but it was the right thing to do. Um,
People don't think about that sometimes when they think about why you market hard too. Because like part of the reason we market hard is so that we can be selective a little bit at least, right? Like we're all trying to grow, right? But it's nice to be a little bit like just being able to turn down obvious red flag clients, customers is like a luxury that requires a good amount of marketing to make happen. Like I know my brother and my dad have a company together and they haven't marketed, but they often have to take work where they're kind of positioned not as, the positioning isn't as good. They have a lot of work, but they like, and a lot of contractors feel that way. They feel like they have too much work. They have so much work, but is it the best work? And is it stuff that they actually want to do, or is it their actual specialty, or are they taking everything that comes in because they're scared to turn anything down? And that's an interesting rabbit hole we could go down to. I'm trying to just to go back real quick to that, like telling that story. Like I'm trying to get better at telling stories. Talk about speaking on stage and stuff like that. I mean, I believe like a big goal of mine is to get better at telling stories because apparently you can like the amount of how much something is more likely to be remembered because you told a story. A story makes things way more memorable. And so I don't know why that is. I think that's a good thing I should research as part of this book is like why? Like what are the chemicals in the brain that activate that make make things more memorable? But apparently it's like a known fact.
I've been watching Netflix stand up specials the past couple nights. I watched Bert Kreischer's Lucky. Like him or hate him, he's a really good storyteller. He is you may not like his jokes or not like the content he's whatever it is. He's an excellent storyteller. And you can watch in the timing and then the way he says things, the tonality, the emphasis, the pauses. It's important. Going back to what you're saying is like speaking on stage is one thing, but just communicating in general. Just communicate. What? Oh, I didn't hear anything. You just have to communicate. It's learn how to communicate better and never give up on getting better at communicating. It's just super, super important. If you want to tell your story, to be relatable, to induce oxytocin, dopamine, you have to learn how to tell stories and communicate the best that you're ever going to do on any piece of video content that you do. And your team also should do the same thing.
I agree 100%. And people's stories, right? You talk about your team and like, if you can tell your people's stories a little bit, like where'd they come from? What do they like about their work? Those types of things, creating it internally and externally. I had to look it up. The chemical combo for storytelling. I'm looking into Jay Golden. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He has a book called Retellable. It's Charles Antis was just on my podcast. He was talking like he uses stories like his whole thing is just stories, and they're like rich, and they've got like emotional details, and they've got like specifics about like what's happening and the feeling and the look and the taste and the etc. Right, and it's actually a huge cocktail of chemicals that ends up making stories memorable, according to ChatGPT, which is endorphins, cortisol, oxytocin, and dopamine. And it's the story arc, I think, because you say like once upon a time, you got to set the world, and everyday pattern. So there's kind of a normalization, and then tell one day a big disruption, right? It's a disruption, and that's where you got to hit them with the cortisol or the stress, because that increases alertness. So there has to be like a challenge or like something like big stakes, right? And because of that, there's all this. This is all movies go, right? There's something crazy happens that's negative, and then they have to recover from it. And because of that, continues the dominoes, the struggle. There's these big stakes in the story. It creates this emotional tension. There's a novelty aspect. The dopamine hits from suspense, curiosity, and then until finally there's a resolution, a decision. Along the way, you the endorphins for humor and relief, and then you end with this dopamine cocktail of like an oxytocin of like till finally this resolution happens and there's a decision and there's a transformation. And ever since that day, the moral, the new worldview, a practical impact. And so that's like that empathy, that connection, that relatable struggle, that vulnerability. And so Jay Golden calls this the story spine. So anyways, I'm trying to learn about that because I want to tell these stories to help lock in the ideas. And I think that also is like vulnerability because I'm not writing fiction. I'm like have to like use my own life and some of the moments, like the best ones, the most interesting ones are embarrassing, or whatever else. Yeah, so I feel like if I could get this down, I would speak better too. I've been roasted by some of my favorite people in the industry on my speaking. I sat down with what's the dude's name from Fraser Roofing? He's super smart. Dominic Fraser. And he's super, super, super nice. We had dinner in Atlanta, and John Cenac was there, and Jim Johnson was there, and I'd just spoken. Like if you ever speak in front of people that you're like, they're really good. They're really good at it. And they probably wouldn't have considered it a roast, but they're giving me constructive feedback. And it was pointed and it was good. It was good feedback. And they gave me like, hey, go look at this speaking coach. And these are a couple things you need to do a little better. And I've been, and Dimitri has done that too, where he kind of gave me the like, here's why he actually told me one time I was bad at speaking, and I like straight to my face. I was like, oh, fuck. But it hit me in a way. It hit me so hard that I like set out to get really fucking good at it. And I have been trying. And I think stories are one way to do it. Now they're hard because you kind of like, but if you have this story spine, it's easier to like, I feel like it'll be easier to figure them out because people remember it. I don't know why people remember it, but I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah. Now I know why they roasted me. I just trail off.
Love it. Hey, we always get distracted. I feel like in every of these Zoom calls that I have all the time, it's like we got so much going on, so many screens. We got to stay on task with storytelling. Well, that's probably going to be the end of today's podcast, but it's been really good catching up with you, Tim. One more time, what's the title of your book and how do they get it and when it's released, all those things.
Okay, I'm giving you this last stat because it's good. Stories improve memory retention by up to 22 times. Up to 22x. Facts are 22 times more likely to be remembered if they are part of a story. So anyways, using stories and getting those cocktails of chemicals up in people's brains. The book is called How to Become a Hometown Hero, a powerful guide to home services marketing. I've got crazy experts on every single chapter. It should be a good time. I hope there's more like usable, tactical things in this book to help you be a better marketer.
Love it. Thanks, Tim. We'll see you again, I'm sure, soon. I know probably not as many events this year, but thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.